they made it so difficult for them that they had to literally sleep on the work site in the fields, because they had such a grueling schedule, and they had such a grueling quota that they had to produce, that they weren't able to go home. But this was actually a device to make sure that they would not return home, so that they would not be able to be together with their wives. And
what did the wives do?
This is all being signaled by this whole concept of what was going on in the field, that they made them sleep in the fields. But the wives, they, again, with tremendous dedication, knowing that this was all like extremely prophetic. And again, this was the whole feminine counterpart, the Shekhinah, the whole kind of understanding that the wives had about the place that they were in history, and the necessity, just like Yaakov's wives, we commented about it then in Parshat Vayetze, how they were so driven, how they seemed to be so obsessed, how they seemed to be so completely with tremendous amount of like tension, like they must have these children now. So too the women of Israel understood that the redemption was dependent on them, and that they had to bring these children into the world. And so they would come to their husbands in the fields, and they brought them water, and they brought them fish. And the Torah talks about a whole miracle that when they would draw water up from the wells, that there were these little fish in it, and of course fish is the symbol of fecundity, also of Peri V'Rivia, of being fruitful and multiply. It's the mazal of the month of Adar, and so they brought them, food and water, and they made themselves beautiful in these copper mirrors, which became the secret of the mirrors that the women brought for their donation to make the copper laver in the tabernacle. Which Moshe, his first reaction was, I'm not going to accept this, because it's actually has a bad connotation. But then Hashem said, no, you're wrong, because this is what they used in order to arouse their husbands, so that they should have the strength to bring these children. So when it was all for the sake of heaven. So anyway, so that's one aspect of the Chazal say of this befarech, of this hard labor kind of, this whole program and campaign that they had to try and see to it that they would not be able to bring children into the world.
Anyway, but what's interesting is that you have shown us that God has directed the wives of Israel to turn this idea that Pharaoh had to use the sexual aspect against Israel, and the wives have turned it around.
Right.
And they've elevated.
That's the thing. In other words, again, the original Pharaoh in Abraham's time had this thing with Sarah, and he tried to somehow, in his fantasies or something, he tried to somehow imbue the future in that land with some sort of holding on to her, and some sort of a thing that he had, and that was part of the whole gifting of the land of Goshen, which he imbued with this kind of like energy, and they used it for the good, and it was against the plans of the Egyptians.